So let's switch gears a little bit. I want to hear your thoughts on housing, right? Everyone complains about housing being more and more expensive. It's become a political issue. It might even be a partisan issue now. What's wrong with housing in the US writ large?
Well, writ large, we don't build enough of it. And the places where you do have abundant housing are not the places where there is the most vibrancy and growth and opportunity.
Why is that?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for it, but it mostly comes down to restrictive zoning that prohibits housing construction and housing density in the places where it's most needed. That is famous in San Francisco, for instance, where there's tremendous demand for housing, but a very restrictive zoning regime that prevents a lot of it from being built, and what is built gets saddled with a lot of additional requirements, fees, etc., that makes the final housing output very expensive. So there are movements to try to roll back some of these zoning rules. We've seen some success in recent years. For instance, places like Montana, interestingly enough, had one of the biggest housing wins of the past year, allowing multi-unit structures really on any residential lot in the state. There's a big push, by the way, in places like Montana for what's called missing middle housing. Missing middle housing are 2 to 10 unit apartment buildings. So duplexes, triplexes, all the way up to 10, maybe 20 units. Those tend to be the most affordable. We also stopped building that kind of housing about 10, 20 years ago.
Why?
Mostly, once again, zoning rules make it really hard. If a developer has a piece of land that is zoned for multifamily, they're gonna build 50, 100, 150 units at least. Everything else is zoned for single family, where you can't build a duplex, you can't build a 5-unit building. So a lot of jurisdictions over the past 2 to 3 years have started rolling back some of those rules, allowing that more affordable missing middle housing. It's not even the most predictable places. I mentioned Montana, Florida. The governor of Florida recently rolled out a very aggressive state preemption of local zoning rules that allows people to build pretty high density in a wide variety of places in the state. So we are seeing some success on the zoning front.
It's interesting because it feels like a lot of politicians are learning what were hard-won lessons of anyone who played SimCity early in their life. Right? Which is, the first impulse, anyone playing that game, where you certainly didn't have to deal with NIMBYism, you just got to master plan everything, was you'd build the highest density everywhere. And then you quickly realized, oh, that doesn't work. And so you need to figure out this kind of careful calibration between, dense zoning, intermediate zoning, and single family. And it feels like in the real world, politicians got this wrong. And probably we didn't account for the potency of NIMBYism and how powerful a political force it can be.
Well, there's really a 50-year arc here of a backlash against the Robert Moses urban renewal of the mid-century, which had
top-down.
Right, top-down.
I'm going to draw highways here.
Yeah, blow freeways through everything. There was a big backlash to that, and very rightfully so, that we need more community input. Neighborhoods need to control their own pace of development, and we need more review before these big projects happen. Unfortunately, that has really been used against a lot of, frankly, projects that will make cities greener and will help save us from the climate crisis. So for instance, it's very hard to build new power transmission lines in the United States today. We build fewer new power transmission lines in the US today than we have in many, many, many decades. And that is despite greater power needs from, obviously we have a lot of renewable power coming on, solar and wind. Data centers need tremendous amounts of power. We're trying to decarbonize the grid, but we can't if we can't build transmission lines. Unfortunately, transmission lines have to go through NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, which could add 10 plus years to their construction timeline and put up a lot of veto points where local landowners can say, I don't want to look at this. So it's a really tough situation, and a lot of the very well-meaning environmental protection, urban protection rules that were rolled out in the 1960s, 1970s are hamstringing us today and making it harder for us to do things like reduce the number of cars, build transit, and build more clean energy.